Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to our 10 Things I Love from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Today I'm going to be talking about 10 things from Revenge of the Sith that I love. Now, I love everything about Star Wars, but I wanted to talk about specific things upon my most recent rewatch that stuck out, giving me those, that warm, fuzzy stuff that makes me think of, that makes me just think of the reasons why I love Star Wars. And so today I'll be going over, like I said, the 10 things from Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith that I specifically love. These won't be in any particular order of how much I love them, but in the order of how they kind of happened in the movie, because that's how I wrote my notes while I was doing this. So yeah, let's just dive right into the 10 things I love from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. So the first thing is the opening. I've already said this in my first two videos about the first two movies, and that's Star Wars always has really great openings, in my opinion at least. I really always love this kind of cold open we always get in the different Star Wars, and Revenge of the Sith is probably one of my favorites. We get this kind of cold open into the middle of a giant space battle, the biggest one we've seen on screen in Star Wars to date, and over Coruscant, and I just absolutely love that that's how we start off the third or episode 3 in the prequel trilogy. And so I really just love that opening. Like, I remember sitting in the theater and just the whole screen being covered in different fighters and clone ships and all these different things, and Obi-Wan and Anakin dealing with droids and trying to get onto Count Dooku's ship in order to rescue Palpatine. And so I just really love that we start this one off again seeing this giant battle, but also starting off with our Jedis and being on Jedi missions. That's what I love about the prequel series, is we get Jedis doing Jedi stuff. And so we start this one off, they're doing some space battle stuff, they're doing some Jedi rescuing stuff, they gotta go save Palpatine, and so that's just a really fun one. Again, we see in this one them just Annie and Obi-Wan, once they get onto the ship, they just chopping down droids again. And I said this in the first in the Phantom Menace video I did, which is I love that the droids are the kind of disposable enemy of the Jedi in the prequel series, because if you had clones, or actually if you had anything but meaning like a living thing as opposed to a droid, it makes it a little bit more like, oh god, you guys are actually killing things. But the fact that they just can chop through droids, and it's a little bit less like, well, they're just droids. It's a little bit more, I just love them as kind of as the enemies for the Jedi to just chop through. And so this one we still see that, as soon as they land, they're just buzzing through 30 of them, not even nervous at all, just chopping wood. And so I really enjoyed that. And then again, this whole opening bit leading up to Anakin versus Dooku. I say Anakin versus Dooku because Obi-Wan gets knocked out really quickly, and Obi-Wan sometimes isn't really conscious of the Force powers. He's really good with a lightsaber, but as soon as Dooku starts waving around Force stuff, he always catches Obi-Wan off guard, it seems. But I really like this. I really loved the Anakin Dooku fight, seeing where Anakin has come since the Clone Wars, because he lost at the end of that one, or Attack of the Clones, I should say. Over the course of the Clone Wars, the kind of Jedi that he has become, what his skill level is. And so I like that we start this off, having ended the last movie with him not being able to defeat Dooku and losing a hand, and this time him being able to defeat Dooku, and then chopping his head off, which isn't completely on Annie. Palpatine was kind of egging him on, being like, do it, you want to do it, and starting to plant that little dark side seed that he does. So yeah, and then the last part of the opening that I really love is the introduction of General Grievous, this great villain. That's one thing. Another thing I love about the prequel series is we got all these great villains added into the universe with Dooku and Grievous. This kind of organic robot thing, like a organic person in a robot shell kind of deal. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but he's awesome. He's cool. I like that he's kind of the apprentice of Dooku, and that he pulls out some lightsabers at some point, but he's not super skilled. He's just got the programming down, and so I really enjoyed that. His introduction, seeing the way he kind of escapes from the Jedi on the ship was just a really cool scene. Him just bursting out the window, clanking down, and being like, "Oh, that's the advantage of being a little bit more of being half robot," or however you want to describe exactly how he's made up. But yeah, so that's pretty much all those things make up the first thing I love from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. The next thing I really love from the Revenge of the Sith is the very slow seduction of Palpatine, or of Anakin by Palpatine to the dark side. Like, it just starts off like I mentioned with him egging him on to kill Dooku, and then as like things are progressing, he's just dropping these little things, and trying to or building her what's it called? Like, kind of wedging some distrust between Anakin and the Jedi Council, and so I just really like the way it takes its time, takes it slowly, and it just, you can see how Anakin kind of falls for it in a sense, not completely, but you do see that, like how Anakin was both blind to him being to being the Sith Lord, but also how it's smart on Palpatine's side to like actually be able to take these moments, be able to just slowly take advantage of Anakin and his kind of emotional state or that he is throughout this whole episode or this whole movie, where he's upset because he's worried about losing Padme, and so he wants to stop that, and the Jedi are all just telling him not to worry, and the only one offering him any help is Palpatine through this kind of wisdom of the dark side. So I just really love how kind of like slowly it's taken and how kind of well done it was. That opera scene, the very famous opera scene we see with the two of them, just with the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's just, I love that, and it's just a great thing. So I really love that. Another thing I love from Revenge of the Sith is Yoda going to Kashyyyk and us seeing the Wookiee home planet and getting a little Chewie. That's one of those things that some people they see as a little too fan servicey, and I'm just into it. I love fan service, so I love that we saw Chewie, especially when I was younger. This is the like trilogy I grew up with. These are the ones that came out when I was a kid, so the fact that I got to see Chewie, who I knew because I had seen the original trilogies, but seeing Chewie on the big screen for the first time for me, like seeing it on a theater screen for the first time, was Revenge of the Sith for me. So that was a fun little moment, and again, learning and seeing the Wookiee home planet, and seeing Yoda has that relationship with the Wookiees, and seeing him go there, and so it's just a really fun part of it that I just really love. Another thing that I really love from the Revenge of the Sith is Obi-Wan versus General Grievous. Obi-Wan eventually tracks General Grievous down and pretty much takes him on and his whole droid army on by himself for a few minutes before the clones show up. But I just really love that showdown between those two, seeing General Grievous, having these 4 lightsabers and being a lot more, mechanically or programmable, and having the speed and strength advantage, but Obi-Wan actually being a, master Jedi and being able to actually use the skills of a lightsaber, and that, even though in the end it doesn't work out, it's just which I love. That's another part that I love about their fight, is the way it ends up with, Obi-Wan having to resort to using a blaster to take out him, and then being like, such an uncivilized weapon, referring to the blaster. So I just really love that fight between those two, just the way it goes down. I love seeing, anytime I see Obi-Wan in a lightsaber fight is a moment I love from Star Wars. He's definitely probably is my favorite character, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not moving on to the next thing that I love about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Episode 3, which is the Mace Windu versus Palpatine fight. Yes, this list is going to consist of a few lightsaber fights, but come on. So yeah, seeing Mace Windu confronting Palpatine kind of finally giving up the facade of, pretending that he's not the Sith Lord, and I just love that fight. Starting off with Palpatine just wrecking the 3 Jedi Masters that came with Mace Windu in just one swipe each. Yes, I agree, they should have put up slight more of a fight, but not too much more. I feel like that was George Lucas's way of being like, no, he's super powerful, even though he's, you know what I mean? Like, he's so powerful, he can take out 3, and that also again shows us how much more powerful and skilled Mace Windu is too, because he's not one who got just chopped down as quickly as the other 3. So yeah, and then we see their lightsaber fight, which is just a really fun one. You've seen this, the dark side versus the light, and then Anakin interrupts, and that's a whole different element to it with Palpatine, playing wounded, but it's also funny because it's Anakin's whole motivation here is just trying to save Padme, and he's not really thinking about everything else. And but he's kind of he's kind of picking and choosing the stuff that he's kind of going with, because he says to Mace that he can't kill him, he has to stand trial, and it's like, well, no, that's not really why you want him not to kill him. Come on, be honest, Annie. So yeah, it was just kind of funny to see that dynamic we get through that whole moment of Anakin finally taking that final step to the dark side by turning on Mace, and then the unlimited power shout that ends up shooting Mace Windu out the window. I'm not going to say if he died or not, because Samuel L. Jackson begs to differ and wants to do another Star Wars movie. Maybe I'm down for it. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that scene, and it kind of ending off with Anakin turning to the dark side and becoming Palpatine's apprentice. And so I also like that it is Mace Windu, the one kind of Jedi Master who I felt through the kind of prequels that kind of butted the heads most with Anakin, because Anakin being the most kind of free-spirited or rebellious one, and then Mace Windu always kind of felt like the most orderly of the Jedi Masters. So I felt they always had that kind of, I don't know, maybe that's something I'm reading into or adding on to their thing, or maybe that's something I got more from the Clone Wars animated series. It's hard to say sometimes. It's hard to keep track of where you get all these stuff. Star Wars has been around so long in my life, especially this movie, 15 years now, from what I remember at least, if I remember the year correctly. Anyways, on to the next thing I love about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, which is seeing Anakin go to Mustafar and taking out the Separatists. These Separatists who have been around the whole prequels, and they kind of sparked this whole thing because they're the ones who are playing the pawns for the Emperor so that he can start a war against the Republic, so that he can then have an army and then have a reason to put himself up. It's a whole thing, but I like that's kind of ended by Anakin, and the way he does it, just going in and just chopping through them all. Now that he's evil, well, after he chopped through the kids, the younglings at the Jedi. I don't love that scene. I don't really love. I wish they kind of left that part out, but it's also, I get it, because yeah, he's officially gone to the dark side, and there's no real hope for redemption if he just killed all the younglings without kind of even second thought. He could have maybe done something else, but that's not really what we're getting into. We're getting into that I loved Anakin going to Mustafar. I just love again that he just immediately is on board with being the apprentice to to Palpatine, to the Emperor, because he's got really no other choice at that point. After he cuts off Mace Windu's hand, he just goes full into it, and him going to Mustafar. And Mustafar just being a great planet. We got a lava planet in Star Wars. I'm one of those people who likes to see every planet having its own kind of thing. Coruscant's a city planet. We got our desert planets. You know what I mean? So I like that we got our lava planet added into it. And it has a fun little thing on your rewatch being like, oh, that's the home of somebody's base in another movie. So that's another little additional nod when you rewatch it, which I had, which is where this list came from. Yeah, so on to the next thing that I love from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is Order 66. No, don't get me wrong, this is one of those ones that's like, oh god, why do I love something so horrible? It's the end of the Jedi. He kills a bunch of Jedi, but it's also kind of cool. It's really well done. It's one of the few times we see a bunch of these different planets, and it has another fun connection because all these planets are featured in the Star Wars Battlefront game, which is one of my favorite video games ever. I'm not a big video game guy, but I love that game. And so a lot of these planets we see where Order 66 takes place, where those take place, we get to play in Battlefront. So that's an extra fun little tie to it. But it's also just, yes, it sucks that this is the moment that the Jedi end, but it's just really coolly done. I like the way it was thought out. It was something at the time I never even thought of. I didn't think it would. It makes so much sense too. It's like, the clones kind of become the stormtroopers. Not exactly, but in a sense, like the clone army gets kind of converted into the stormtroopers in a sense, and then they recruit other people, from what I know at least. But yeah, I like that it was such, for me at least when I first saw it was a shock. I knew the Jedi all had to like die at one point. I just didn't put that together. And granted, I was not that old when this came out. I think I was 12 when this movie came out, so I just didn't quite think to put together that they'd be the ones to turn on the Jedi, but it makes sense, and I just, again, like the way it kind of executed, and again, it shows that Palpatine has been behind this the whole time, because it's like, how else would he have, been able to execute this order if he didn't, program it into them or have them all trained with it when he, got Cypher Diaz to originally place the order for them. So I just really enjoy the way we get Order 66 and implementing and kind of seeing, and it also kind of leaving us this kind of, also leaves a little bit of ambiguity because we don't see every Jedi, and we see that, we see that Obi-Wan and Yoda are two of the ones escape. It leaves this opening for us to be able to in the future get more Star Wars stories where other Jedis maybe escaped, as they've done with things like Rebels, where they had a couple Jedi from that escape, but that's also a little bit more of a Disney edition to it, and that's not something we'll get into. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and then the end of the end of Order 66 being Yoda and Obi-Wan taking back the occupied Jedi temple to stop this signal that was telling all the Jedi to come back. And so I like seeing, again, Obi-Wan chopping down people, but again, being able to see Yoda actually doing some stuff. That's another great thing about the prequels, is that we get to see Yoda actually doing Jedi stuff as opposed to just training Luke, which, yes, was great in the originals, but I also like seeing him actually chop some people down, some droids down, him flipping around and stuff. I love it. So yeah, really loved seeing that as well. So yeah, the next thing I love about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is Palpatine conning the Senate. Now, some people complain, I've mentioned this already a couple times, some people complain about the politics heaviness in the prequel trilogy. I personally don't have as much problem with it. I kind of like it. It makes sense. How do you take over an entire galaxy with thousands of star systems? Politics. It's how they keep us all in order. So I really enjoy seeing him conning the Senate by being like, oh, the Jedi tried to kill me, look at me, I'm all scarred up now. The Jedi tried to overthrow us, and so to protect us from that, I'm gonna be in charge, I'm gonna be the Emperor. Well, that's the part he doesn't mention. He was like, we're gonna change this republic into a galactic empire, and everyone's like, yeah, and I'm like, he just gave himself a promotion to Emperor, and nobody questioned it whatsoever. But again, that's the brilliance of Palpatine, because all this time, him creating the Clone Wars to, give a reason for him to become the Supreme Chancellor, and the fact that he's been Supreme Chancellor for the entire Clone Wars, the universe is kind of used to him being in charge. So I guess when he just tells them, hey, I'm still going to be in charge, just you're going to call me Emperor now, they're all just like, yeah! But they didn't think it through, except for Padme, who has a great line in that part, which is, so this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good line. George Lucas sometimes gets a little hated on for his writing, but I felt the prequels got a few really fun lines. Yes, it's got some bad ones like the sand stuff, but it's got some fun lines like that, which is talking about how this is, it wasn't a big war in a sense. Well, it was a war, but it wasn't that the Emperor had to fight every individual star system to convince them to join the Empire or to take over. All he had to do was just play the game of politics, play the Game of Thrones, if you will, and he was able to take it over, and it just and they all happily to give it away because it's they make him feel safe for a little bit at least. So yeah, I just really love that part about this one. The next thing I love about Star Wars, we're almost at the end, guys. This is number 9. But the thing I love from Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith is the double lightsaber fights we get as the kind of conclusion to the third act. We get a Yoda versus Palpatine, or Yoda versus the Emperor, and then we also get Obi-Wan versus Anakin. Still my personal favorites, lightsaber fight in all of Star Wars, just because, again, this is the first. This is not the first one. I would have seen probably the first two movies in theaters as well, but this is one of the first ones to me that I distinctly have like the memory of seeing it in the theater in my mind, and just remember being just blown away and how long it was, how awesome it was, just how great it was. Yes, there's a few times that like some of the choreography is a little like, why'd you guys put your lightsabers down at that point and start trying to kick each other? But other than that, I really loved the whole fight overall. And the fact that we're getting intertwined with the Yoda and Emperor fight going on at the Senate. And again, seeing, like I already said, seeing Obi-Wan fighting, I love. Seeing Yoda fighting, I love. So the fact that the third movie in this in the prequel trilogies ends off with this duel, like 20 minutes, it might not be 20 minutes, it just feels really long though, but this duel, really long scene of dual lightsaber fights, kind of cutting back and forth between Anakin and Obi-Wan, going across Mustafar, trying to avoid lava, trying not to get burned, and then also seeing Yoda and the Emperor, throwing stuff in the Senate and trying to do stuff, and I just really enjoy it. One thing I do love about the Yoda one is I felt he gave up a little quickly. I don't know, maybe that's just my own. He is old. He is an older gentleman, so I can't judge too much. He is a Yoda after all, but his immediate thing is to go into exile, and I'm like, okay, that felt a little rushed, Yoda. You don't believe in a second chance? You don't believe in a second try? No, just okay, all right. I understand. All right, Yoda. But yeah, I still love it. I still really love that fight between Yoda and the Emperor, and the Anakin and Obi-Wan fight on Mustafar, and that one obviously ending with this big climax, pretty much the final creation of Darth Vader, which is not Anakin, Obi-Wan fucking Anakin up. Sorry for my language, but Obi-Wan had the high ground, which I talked about in the first one, which I talked about in my first video about the Phantom Menace, which is kind of funny that in that one he didn't have the high ground when he took out Maul, but in this one having the high ground kind of made sense, I guess, because of the lava. If Anakin tried to jump in front of him, he just force him to run into the lava. If he tries to jump over him, he gets his legs chopped off. But I just really love that kind of leading up to that climax. We get these just the dialogue between those two too. I just love, particularly Obi-Wan just shouting at Anakin, "You were the chosen one. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. You're supposed to bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you." And I'm just like, I love that line so much. It's just so, like, you can just feel it in that moment. You see that, like, we don't see it as much on screen unless you go watch the Clone Wars series. Then you get a little bit more like, oh, okay, you get a little more of a feeling of how much time they've spent together and how they are very much like brothers, or even more like brothers than they have ever been. Teacher, student, or mentor and mentoree, or apprentice. They've always been more of a kind of brother duo, and you see Obi-Wan kind of admitting that in this one, something he's never admitted love before, in a sense. He's always one telling you those are the things you gotta avoid, but he's just like, you were mine, Anakin, you're my brother, and you fucked it all up. You were supposed, sorry for the language again, but you were supposed to be the good guy. You're supposed to destroy him, and now what? You're gonna go join him? And obviously Obi-Wan doesn't know what George Lucas' plan overall was, but I just really love the emotion of that scene, just the whole thing of it. I just love it. But that brings me to the last thing that I love about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the last thing from Revenge of the Sith, because I do love all the Star Wars movies. These were just some, again, specific things that when I was watching, I was like, yes, I can go talk about this in a video for a little bit. As you can see, this one's very long. But yeah, the last thing I love from Revenge of the Sith is the ending, the last 5 minutes, where we get the Emperor saving Anakin after his fight with Obi-Wan, and we seeing him getting donning the Darth Vader armor that we all know and love, and him taking that breath we all know, and then James Earl Jones voice coming out of him, and that no, and just I love that. I love seeing that, like that creation of him, and Palpatine's line of like, or well, I love that. Vader's first thing or Annie's first thing is, "Well, there's Padme," and the Emperor's like, "Oh, it seems in your anger you killed her, man," and he's like, "Wait, no, she was still alive, no," and it's like, that makes sense why this would be the moment you've officially just not Anakin Skywalker anymore. Well, yes, you could say he already wasn't before, but this is the one where you officially see, I think, Vader officially comes to life with that no, and like the Vader at least we know from the original trilogy. Yeah, so another part of the ending I like is kind of seeing the Luke and Leia's kind of, I guess, their birth and the explanation of how they ended up being separated, and I just kind of like that explanation that we got. It was a little bit straightforward, but again, it's just a little fun thing to learn how they ended up where they were before we get to the original series so many years later. And then yes, the last couple little things at the ending, which was Yoda mentioning that he has training for Obi-Wan from Qui-Gon Jinn, and implying about the Force ghosts, and that's how Obi-Wan learns about the Force ghosts, because we haven't really heard about them through through the prequels. So I really like that kind of fun little like single line or a couple lines from Yoda, or between Yoda and Obi-Wan, to kind of just set up Force ghosts in the original trilogy. And then the last thing we see, the last shot we see, is the Emperor Darth Vader checking out the Death Star construction just starting, and that's another one of these fun nods again, just dropping all these little seeds to like officially like close off the prequel that then obviously would set up the original trilogy, which was already made. But yeah, that's all the 10 things I love from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Sorry this video took so long if you managed to stick with me through it, but I love Star Wars, and I pretty much did mention almost everything from this movie, but it was 10-ish things. But yeah, that's all the things, like I said, that's all the things I at least wrote down that I wanted to talk about Revenge of the Sith. But be sure to let me know in the comments below what you love about Episode 3. Thanks again for joining me today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.